All right, good morning, everybody, and welcome back to Money in the Law, My FM 101.3, with your host, Jay Mars, and he's from the Mars & Law Group. I'm John Drouin from Main Effort Financial, and, of course, Tom Harmon, who is bringing this. He's bringing the video aspect of this.
Tom on the bag.
All from, for the Holliston Hub, the artist formerly known as H-Cat.
Yeah.
And today is a very special day here on Money in the Law. Because finally,
mark this in your calendar.
We have a live guest, in-studio guest right now.
Yes.
None other than the legendary R&R Landscape King of Holliston, Jimmy Reed.
Yes.
Jimmy Reed is here today.
Applaud now.
Everybody,
applaud now.
The applause sign is up.
That's right.
What did I sign up for?
So, Jimmy, how you doing?
Good, man.
Are you great to see you? Thank you for joining us today. Jay, of course, is very happy.
Great to be here.
Yeah, he's very happy to see you.
In the presence of landscaping greatness.
boy.
I mean, for crying out loud. How much better does it get?
It's landscaping.
The honor is mine.
Yeah. Oh, stop.
I'm
please.
excited.
Yeah. You look excited.
All right, so just to tee this up a little bit, Jimmy, Jay, and I, we all know each other. We're all like local Holliston guys. Jimmy actually also is in charge of all things making both yours and my property as beautiful as it is, and we're gonna get into how he approaches that.
Sorry about that.
So we've been talking for a long time to get you on the show. And you know, you're like, oh yeah, I'd love to come. I listen to your show, so he's a fan. So if we had T-shirts available, you'd get one.
Yeah.
So when they do come back, you're gonna get one.
Top of the list.
You're a schmedium kind of, right? Yeah.
Schmedium.
I didn't believe that we were really doing video. So
it's happening. So
here I am, right from work.
The video threw him for a loop. He walks in. He's like, we're joking about it all the way up the stairs, right? Hey, we're gonna be on video. He's laughing, and he walks in the room and his face just drops. He's like, these guys were serious.
Who's this guy, Tom?
Who's Tom?
I got to play the part too.
Yeah,
so
that's all right.
So the plan is that Jimmy's going to come in, and Jimmy is like your quintessential like small business success story.
Yes.
He is like, when we talk about small business or local business.
Yep.
That's what when you think local business, especially in Holliston, there's nobody that comes to mind before R&R Landscape and Jimmy Reed.
Well, we've talked about it on the show before. Everybody has an origin story, right? And so we're dying to hear yours. And we thought it'd be, as we kind of teed up the show, we said, look, this is kind of like a small business symposium, sharing some of the stories and sharing your story, sharing kind of how you got where you got. And, we love working with you. We worked with you for years. And so, we want to dive in and hear a little bit of that, bit about that.
You're making me blush.
And really? It'll show. And so one of the things we'll give you, because you're this is new to you as far as video, although Jimmy's a member of the planning board in Holliston, so he's on TV quite a bit. So this whole I've never seen a camera before, that's not totally true.
No, but when you're involved in government like that, your face is usually obscured by the person who's yelling at you at that moment, right? So you don't really spend a lot of time on camera because everybody else is yelling at you and blocks it. So.
Or we're ducking for cover.
That's right. You're under
with things being thrown at us.
That's right. You're blocking out of the way because as a member of the planning board, you're always making people happy. Everybody loves your answers.
That's right. Yeah, because that's why you do it, right? Because for all the glory and all the success, because everybody, they call you. You probably get calls all the time about planning. Like Jay used to when he was select board. They just call up and be like, "Hey, Jay, thanks a lot for all that you're doing. Thanks for everything. Hey, I don't need anything. I'm just calling to tell you you're doing a great." You probably get those calls
all day at the office,
all day,
all day at the office.
Yeah, no.
Jimmy, another thankful constituent on line 2. Pick up.
No, still waiting on those calls.
Yeah. All right, so let's get started. We'll start off with a little background here.
Sure.
Usually Jay and I, for the first segment, we just talk about kind of, I don't know, what
ourselves.
have you been doing? What have you been doing? So we're going to talk about you.
You talk about golf, probably.
We talk a little bit. We do talk about golf. Some people are more affluent golfers than others. Tom is the best golfer
like
in
he's
this
walking
room right
off
here.
the course right now.
Exactly.
Yep.
So let's talk. Why don't you give us like a little bit of background of kind of where you started, and we know you're like a local Holliston guy, and kind of tell us kind of how you got to where you are with R&R Landscape.
I was born, raised Holliston. I'm fourth generation Holliston.
Fourth generation.
Yeah,
How many years is that? Is that like what's that? What century is that?
80s,
yeah,
4
maybe,
times 60.
Maybe Civil War. I don't know.
So Civil War.
Yeah, maybe.
So as far as I'm concerned, your ancestors all fought in the Civil War, right? They came back right after the war, and with their rucksack and okay.
Yeah, I haven't got that far yet in the genealogy, but I live in the house I grew up in, so I'm pretty towny, I guess. I love Holliston.
Sure.
Holliston's been really good to me. My father started the business actually in the late 1960s.
Okay.
If you can believe it. And at that time, the idea of a commercial landscape service was almost non-existent. There was conversation somewhere along the way that, he was the first in the whole area to have a large frame lawnmower, that he actually had to sign some sort of paperwork when he purchased it that he wouldn't be using it for X, Y, and Z. It was really geared towards, fields, farms, and so on and so forth.
Football field.
Yeah,
Yeah.
big open space.
Yeah.
Because at the time, it was super unusual to, have, again, a commercial landscape
Super unusual
service.
because most
Yeah.
people were just doing their own
Yeah.
lawns, like the idea
or just not at all, right?
Okay, yeah.
Just
Or
like-
the kid, right? The kid,
yeah,
like, if
or
you're a
like
kid,
farm
that's how people
animals,
make-
or
Yeah,
maybe
yeah.
they had cows.
alpaca.
Yep.
Sure,
Sheep,
that was-
goats, yep.
So he, he that was back in the late '60s, if you can believe it. In the '80s, he had a pretty good run in the '80s. The '90s, he was dealing with some things that ultimately affected his health and the business in
Sure.
that time back
Sure.
in the '90s. Sadly he died. He was my hero. He died in 2002. I was 21 years old at the time. I really didn't have much going on. I didn't know what I wanted to do
Yeah.
with my life. I hadn't found something that I wanted to make a living doing. So I just kept doing what I was doing.
And had you worked in the business at that time
yeah,
for him?
yeah, through high school, after work,
course you
after
did.
school, I would help.
Sure.
And, so when he died, I was 21. I had one guy named John helping me out for a short time. He was great. For a year or so, it was just me.
Yeah.
And then, I got some help again and, it continued to grow through the years. Around 2007, I added a guy named Jim also that actually he's the nephew of the police chief here, Tom O'Laughlin. It's
yeah.
his nephew,
Yeah.
Jim O'Laughlin. He had joined up with me, and he was a really smart kid, and he gave me a lot of good advice. And the best advice he had given me was look around at the guys that are doing a lot of it. Look at the guys who seem to be getting ahead. You need a snow plow, you need a leaf vacuum, you need a trailer, you need all these other things. And he was an integral part of the growth of the business, just in saying, hey, look around and adapt. So we did. And, then I had added another guy. There was the three of us. And,
Right.
as we're approaching now 2012, when we get to the dry season, they say, hey, get out of the truck. We don't want you in the truck with us anymore. We go find more work for us, to keep us busy because, things get dry. Sometimes you have dry summers. And it was 2012. It was the best thing I could have done was, get out of the truck when I could and go get more work, continue to build the business up. And then in 2012 was actually the first year that I wasn't actively in the field. I had 4 guys at that time, and it was the turning point of the business. Actually, was the first year that I wasn't with them.
That's something, right? Something how that works.
Well, yeah,
right?
they were thrilled not to have me around. So
Well, no, but it's funny because we've had similar conversations here in the office, and so you're talking about at what point was it time for you to step away from out in the field work and focus on growing the business and going and getting clients and being the face of the business, very consistent across all practices.
The biggest challenge for, I think, most self-employed business people is they're trying to run the business and do the work at the same time. And, I think there's there's an understanding with a lot of self-employed people within the general public that, self-employed people maybe don't call back right away. They don't communicate well. They don't follow up. But, the truth is a lot of these guys and women that are self-employed small business owners, they never really set out to be business owners. They just liked what they did.
Yep.
And they ultimately wanted to be the one making the decisions. And so what they did was they're trying to do the work and they're trying to run the business simultaneously. And that stalls communication after hours, and it really limits the growth of a business. So, the year that I stepped away from my crews, I noticed, there are growing pains leading up to it, but once you're over that hump to the point where you can step away and you have people you can depend on. We grew exponentially. We grew from, the 2 or 3 guys, from 1 to 2 to 3 to the 4 in 2012. And now we've got 20 people on staff at peak season. A lot of help from the college kids when they show up. And, I still love what I do. When I write my spring mailers every year, I know I know you guys know that they're wordy.
Yep.
The letters are
Yeah,
long.
we read them.
You read them verbatim, right?
I finished it.
Hold all my
about
calls.
mid-August. Yeah.
Hold my calls.
Right.
The R&R mail came in. Hold on.
I mean.
But who came up with that idea?
I mean,
That's a great idea.
Well, we always send a spring letter.
Yeah.
I think it gets people excited for spring, and it allows us to build our season early.
And
you figure out what
schedule
people's
out.
needs
Yeah.
are, and you build your season early. Even though most of our work is recurring,
Sure.
we have to rebuild the company from scratch, the
much,
customer base from scratch every year. You can't assume
No one's
that
under
somebody's
contract,
gonna,
right? There's
well,
no-
yeah, you
yeah.
can't assume that somebody's going to have you back doing the same service you did the year before, ever, because that gets you in a lot of trouble.
Sure.
Because for whatever whatever the reason is, right? It could be not your fault. It could be just the fact that they're in a different circumstance. It could
Sure.
be
People
that
move. People. I mean, that's how we ended up with you
people
guys.
move.
They buy a 0-turn lawnmower and they go, I can do. Oh, watch this. I'll do this way
People
better
move.
than the R&R guys.
People die.
Yep.
Yeah.
Sometimes you get fired. We lose, I would say, about 10 to 12% of our client base over from the mowing season, the season before. We lose about 10 to 12% in the following initial startup of the
that's
mowing
the
season.
that's an
But
industry thing.
You replace that 10 to 12% with an additional 10 to 12%, and we've seen about 10 to 15% of overall growth in gross sales really every year since I took over in 2002. Every single year steadily.
Nice.
And it's not something I take for granted.
Sure.
Um,
Is there one thing that you are, for any number of reasons, unable to do that you would love to be able to do? And there's some things that might limit it. I'm just guessing here, but
take a vacation. It's been 7 years.
really?
Yeah.
God bless
well,
you.
this is kind of like a start right here. We're going to get you started right here because our viewership, we'd say we're in the up north of, we're probably 500,000 plus. We see
Just in this area,
there's a
just
lot
in this area
the
alone,
local.
I think.
That's
The
not
whole
even.
East
That's
Coast.
not the streaming.
That's
That's
not
not the
just-
My
that's
FM
not just
streaming.
Holliston. That's not just
That's not
Holliston.
streaming
Yeah.
on Holliston Hub. So who knows? So you may get 1 or 2 out of
You
this.
get a vacation 7 to 10 years down the road.
So that's the Jimmy Reed side of the story. Jay and I probably have another side of this. Like we probably have we're looking at this from a different angle because, and I'll say, and we're going to go into a break in a sec, but I'll kind of tease this. Like when I met you, right, and I kind of see, because you're like, oh yeah, we're just I'm just.
I think I met you at a BNI group.
Yeah,
or something, right?
but you come across just like, yep, I'm just what you see is what you get. Like I'm a small business.
Yeah.
I drive, I work hard, right? But then all of a sudden you see this big ginormous like the R&R landscape,
Yeah.
like the whole pavilion over there.
The global headquarters.
On Route 16, and again, so I've lived in Holliston for a number of years. My wife grew up in Holliston, so all of a sudden, we're driving up and down Route 16, and all of a sudden you see that, and you're like, where's that been? Like,
Yeah.
where's that been? And your story, because then you kind of told me
Yeah.
like how that all kind of came about.
So let's
is
go to break and
fascinating.
talk about that because I remember that going up. I remember you
Yeah.
telling me how excited you were about it.
Yeah.
I want to hear that story because I find that fascinating.
All right, so don't go away. You got Jimmy Reed right here,
come on
and
now.
Jay and John, and and the other guys. But don't go away. We'll be right back.
And we're back, My FM 101.3. Jay Marsden with the Marsden Law Group. John
can you see Jim?
Drohan, Main Effort Financial, hogging the
right.
camera here as usual. Tommy's on the bag, and our special guest today, Jimmy Reed, R&R Landscaping, talking all things green, all things grow, and we're just kind of going through a kind of small business owner's lament. He's kind of giving us some information. Love to hear about the business. Love to hear about his origin story, and we're just talking shop.
So you can't make it up any better, right?
No,
So
no.
like your story, and I never knew the story about like how your dad
Yeah.
started the business, and then your dad obviously died
man.
really young, and that must have been like this really kind of like a big huge event in like your whole family's life, and then and you're like, wow, I'm here, I'm I'm a kid. I'm 21 years old, but this is what I know. And you kind of picking up the yoke and pushing through the fields and making it happen. That's you can't make that up any better as far as like your classic, like small business success story.
Yep. Very common. Very. You hear it a lot.
It wasn't always pretty, man.
Well, I bet.
It never is. It never is.
I mean, for a lot of years, we were driving around in a pickup truck with lawnmowers, walk behind lawnmowers, because that's all we had.
Yeah,
right?
sure. The lock
They
mowers,
were they were in the bed of pickup trucks. Like, we didn't have trailers, know. We had belt-driven walk-behind lawnmowers in the beds of pickup trucks.
A couple 2x6s rolling
Yeah.
down.
No. We had 2x10s, 2x12s.
Whoa,
we
sorry, my
we
bad.
really went crazy with the
Hold on.
rims.
Thought I was gonna catch him off guard.
Yeah, we really splurged at Lowe's.
He saw through my charade. He saw through my charade.
Being honest with you, so those were not our finest moments, but they were growing pains.
Sure.
Right, but also, like, we've been in every dilapidated garage in town.
Yep.
Like, that's where a lot of small businesses start, right? I mean, what they say, Apple, or was it, started in
HP.
somebody's garage, right?
Yep.
It was started in a lot of small businesses start in a home garage or, home office, wherever. We've been in a lot of the old garages around town, and it wasn't until we reached the point where I felt comfortable and said, we need a place to call home. I need to talk to a bank and see if we can get this done. And obviously, once we built the building, we were really busy as it was. But
Sure.
the growth once the building went up was like exponential.
Sure. Yeah.
Just, I think image has a lot to do with it too. And people would call, they said, "Oh yeah, we love your new building. We want to talk to you about doing the lawn." And I would say, don't ask us to do your lawn because you like the building.
Yeah.
We want to do your lawn because your neighbor's happy with us, or
Right.
because we've been doing your family members' home.
But the building, your forever home. For those of you who don't know, Jimmy's got a great space on 16 down by Weston Pond. Real great facility that they put up.
Yeah.
You're going to tell us some more about that. But that does confer a level, not that you weren't before, but it confers a level of public legitimacy.
Sure, yeah.
Because you have
Yeah.
a forever home.
Well,
Right?
the visibility too is
The visibility
alone,
second.
right?
Yeah, I mean, you're packed across the street from a soccer field. What better advertising could you get?
I mean,
right?
there was a lot of things happened to just line up. The timing was impeccable. Looking back, they're not making more land.
Sure.
It's really hard to, for a small business owner to not only take the plunge, get approved by a bank to borrow money and build a home for themselves, but between interest rates, costs of material, land availability, and I had signed a purchase and sale agreement for that property in September of 2019, and it was that mild winter, which was actually was a very difficult winter for me for personal reasons, and we had no snow.
Yep.
It was a scary time. We that spring, I went to closing on that property, and it was just a scary time in my life. We were entering a pandemic.
I was going to say there's another thing going on in the spring of 2020. I can remember.
I signed my promissory note with the bank right during the pandemic, and if my father were alive, he would have said, "Run from this."
Yep.
Don't do this. We're going into uncertain times. And I get goosebumps talking about it
Sure.
because I did it anyways. My contractor, Mark Deliker, who's just phenomenal and one of my best friends, he said, "Jimmy, this is the best opportunity you'll ever have to do this."
Yeah.
You had, materials yards where we needed fill and, that where the trucks were inactive at the time.
Sure.
Everybody was kind of in a panic and all of the projects were stalled. It made it so much easier to get materials, get fair pricing from contractors, tradesmen. Interest rates were down, land values were fair. And then, by the time I got my occupancy in the spring of 21, things started to creep. And by 22, to have duplicated what I had just done, it would have cost me probably 50% more.
Sure.
With just 2 years later,
Yeah, you got to go down one hill to get up the next one, right? And it doesn't feel like that at the time, though. Yeah. And that's my question. Never look back, right? That was a great decision.
Yeah. Not all my decisions have worked out. But
what was your question? You said that was my.
My question
that
was.
wasn't a question.
Well, my question was, are you glad you did it? Was my question.
Oh,
right?
my God.
Looking back.
Looking back, aside from marrying my best friend, and having my
Wait, you're married to Mark Delacour? Oh my God. I never
different
knew.
best
I
friend.
never
I didn't
knew
know that either. I didn't know that
That
either.
is crazy.
Oh, my
now you
goodness.
get a discount on
I
the
see what you-
world.
I
You
see
get all
what
the
you did there.
project there. It's all works out perfect. That's great.
I
What a
know.
He
deal.
is a super guy.
He is a guy. He's a great guy. He's a great guy.
Right?
Great guy.
Yeah.
I married my best friend. We've been together since we were kids, 1997. I never planned to have children.
Sure.
And then coincidentally, over the course of 19 into 20 that winter, she says, I want to try to have children, and we're not getting younger.
Sure.
We did this, and I don't want to get emotional. It was
Listen, that's
Yeah.
why we're armed
joked
for
to let
this.
him
right?
bring it.
That's why we bring him.
We,
That's why we
had
bring him. It's like
our
Oprah.
son Spencer.
Yep.
He's the best thing that ever happened to me. So aside from marrying my best friend,
Sure.
and having our boy Spencer, the decision in terms of business decisions, building that property and taking a leap of faith at that time was hands down absolutely the best financial decision I
Sure.
ever made. I mean, there's no quicker way to build wealth than real estate.
Yep.
Most people say. So.
But all those business decisions that you make, they don't get made in a vacuum. I mean,
Yeah.
your family is affected by all of those decisions.
Yeah.
They're affected by the good parts of the ones that work out, and then you said not all the decisions are great. So yes, it's a business decision, but
Yeah.
it's so, especially as a small business owner, it's so connected to everything that is personal in your life, which is your business. 'Cause
These
you're-
things kind of just happen naturally.
Yep.
Sometimes it's hard to really see, what point you're at in your life and what big decision might be on the horizon. And, do you maybe just stay the course and do what you're doing? Or is there something that you should be thinking about? Because, none of us are getting out alive. The time is now.
Sure.
And, it's, again, it's, I don't know. Life is, life's a funny thing. I don't,
Just holding on to this, just in case.
you know,
just in case, right?
life has been very good to me, but I also, I'm very grateful for that.
Well, so one, the big thing, and we talk about this all when we talk about small business. I mean, all this is great and all I want to do this and I have these dreams, these visions of grandeur, and and everybody should do that, and that's kind of part of how you do it. But at the end of the day, all that costs money.
Yeah.
And money is real, and money doesn't grow on trees. Money, everybody wants money. That's why
That's why they call it money.
Exactly.
That's why they call it money.
So, on the one hand, you're like, yeah, you know what? I'm going to leave the truck and I'm going to start drumming up business. But then that means now I got to pay 3 more guys.
Yeah.
And they're not working for free, right?
Right.
So that decision, that kind of, when you kind of make that leap of faith to kind of go to that next level, or you make that leap of faith where now instead of working out of my yard or working out a property that I already own, I'm going to build this, this new thing. That all that costs money. So all of that is that's a risk, a financial risk that you take, and it's that's a real thing.
Well, even when people tell you, especially people that you trust, when they say to you, "This is the right move," until you've made that move, you don't know. You don't know. They call them terror barriers, right? You have no idea what you're going to be able to get through, and you say to yourself, "Yeah, I know. In theory, owning a building and having a place to put my my business works.
Practice.
My business
yeah.
works." But you're not comfortable with it, and you're signing on for a commitment, and you're signing on.
Being
for,
honest with you, if I had a nickel for every time somebody thought they could manage or run the business better than I could, I'd be retired already.
Yeah,
It's,
sure.
It's you're always going to have, of course, if they're an employee or a friend or family or neighbor or customer or whoever, you listen and you kind of evaluate. But at the end of the day, it all falls on the lap of the business owner at the end of the day, and decisions that you make are ones that you'll have to live with. And, there's a lot of gambles. I mean, when I removed myself from the field, I was confident in the group that I had at the time. I could project, the gross sales or the income from it, and what I needed to survive. You're gonna have. I see a lot of young landscapers now that the first few years, 2, 3, 4, 5, they can be hard. They can be really hard. Usually, if you're doing it right, if you have a good business model, eventually you have the right people, you get over the hump eventually.
Right.
And it's all good from there. It's smooth sailing from there. But it does break a lot of people. I mean, I was very fortunate when when my father, when he passed, the business was very small. There were probably maybe 30 or 40 customers at the time, but I had a roof over my head.
Yeah.
I was young.
Yeah.
I didn't have many bills. Things don't cost what they cost now. And I had enough to keep going.
You had a framework to work within, right?
Yeah.
You had just enough to kind of, that having some to start with is different than going
If
out
I
and
had
getting
to
that
do it
first
all
one.
over again, would I suggest to anybody to get into the lawn maintenance business? Probably not. I mean, if I could do it all over again, I would have studied a lot harder in school, like you guys. I mean,
Well,
really.
let's hold on.
It's a true story. I mean,
Settle down.
if I could
Yeah.
do it all over again, I would have studied harder. I would have, gone to college, which I did not. I
Right.
barely made it out of Holliston High School. I think they let me out because they felt bad. But
We confirm those. Before
they get
the
tired of
show,
it. They get
we
tired of it.
confirm
Yeah,
those
we
records.
confirm that.
You're,
I
no,
would
you're
love-
good.
Yeah.
You're good.
I would love
Yeah.
to do something with engineering. I think it's a little late now, but yeah, I mean, it's not the way I drew it up, man. Life kind of takes you funny places.
Sure.
If you're just along for the ride. Sometimes I was just along for the ride. It's like the young guys that work for me now. I tell them, it's a good idea to go to college, certainly, and I'm not trying to say it's not. But like when you're young, when you're 15, 16, 7, when you're getting, closing out high school, you need to be thinking about what you enjoy and what you want to do down like long term.
Yeah.
What you can make money doing. You need to be thinking about your future. But I'll tell you, when you're that age, it's really hard to think about what you want to be doing 10, 20, 30,
You can't imagine
40 years.
yourself 40 years old.
Yeah.
You're living in the moment.
that's
You're
Well, a
so
lot of
old.
those kids
Right?
they haven't found what they love yet.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's right, and that's it. We talk about this all the time, like right, like you say, what do you want to do when you grow up? Like, and the answer oftentimes is I don't know,
Yeah.
and that's okay. Like I don't know is a real answer, but it's like, hey,
How do you know when you're 16,
that's
17
right.
years
So
old?
so now it's like start figuring it out. Like,
I know a
do
lot of
things
people
to
that
get to
have
that.
a degree from college, and what they do for an occupation has nothing to do with
to
it.
do.
what
Totally
they studied.
unconnected. Yep,
I mean,
totally
they
unconnected.
got strapped to the student loans.
Yep.
And years of their life that they can't get back, that they were studying something that they have no interest in.
Yeah.
So it's hard. Again, I'm not saying don't go to school. That's not what I'm saying. But you when you're that age, you really got to be thinking about what you enjoy and what you can make a living doing.
And so when you were 21 and you were thinking about at someday, all I want to do is be on the Holliston planning board.
Oh,
You're like,
yeah.
I mean, that was like one of your
Check-
marks, your
oh,
check marks.
Check that box off.
We're
yeah.
gonna
yeah.
we're gonna
You wanna
talk
hear
about
about-
that.
you wanna hear
because
about your
We're gonna
political
need a
life.
break
we're
before
gonna hear
this
about
one.
we're gonna hear
About
about
your
your
political life.
because that is and again, here we
Oh,
are
my gosh.
with the political. I mean, kind of political royalty. Like
I would
both-
need another hour for this one, but all right.
Oh, we'll,
All right.
we'll squeeze it in.
Yeah, we'll get you. All right, so don't go away. We're right here on My FM 101.3, Money in the Law. Jay Mars and John Droin, and our guests Jimmy Reed and Tommy Harmon, of course. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
And we're back. My FM 101.3. Jay Marsden with the Marsden Law Group. John Drohan, Main Effort Financial.
Come on.
And Tommy Harmon behind
Really?
the
Jesus
bag.
Christ.
It's red leather, yellow leather, red leather, yellow leather.
It's
Trying
fine.
to work that out today. you know.
Marsden Law Group. This is how they said it. Marsden.
Marsden Law Group. Marsden Law Group.
Yeah.
Jimmy Reed's here, R&R Landscape, and we're talking. It's our small business shout out here, and he was just telling us about all the kind of the history behind R&R, which was fascinating and fantastic to hear. I didn't know a lot of that, so I appreciate that. But now we're going to turn a page, and we're going to talk about his political career. You didn't know he was a politician, did you?
Well,
And, go ahead.
I was going to say, let me. So let's like see where we, because we kind of hear your whole story. And
Well,
it's-
what I envision is him driving around, looking at all the meticulously maintained lawns that he's taken care of all over Holliston.
No.
And I envision him saying to himself, you know what would look good right there? A Jimmy Reed for planning board
Yeah.
sign. And then he just gives them to
That's
the guys
right,
and
yeah.
says,
That-
when you're
right.
done cutting the
Yeah,
lawn,
just
put one
plop
of
this
these
in the front of it,
And
right?
everybody's like,
There you
yeah,
go.
whatever, of course they are. Makes
So-
the lawn look better.
So I just have to say, so we kind of hear this whole story, and I remember you telling me when you were running for planning board.
Yeah.
I remember you saying, "Listen, I experienced this. Like I lived this when I was putting my property
Yeah.
in. I was doing. I lived in. I'm like, and you're like, I know this. I know what I did wrong. I know what I did right. I know, and I can be the guy who can make a difference and make a real difference, as opposed to people kind of just sitting back and like, la la la. Like you're like, no, I know how to make this work. So,
Yeah.
So that kind of enthusiasm, and again, based on your own experience, was like that's kind of what you carried into this.
Well,
And
you've lived it. You've lived it. You've got real life experience. It's not theoretical for you. So tell us what prompted it. Tell us that origin story.
That's a funny one. My first experience really, aside from being in a butter for projects in the neighborhood, my first real experience with town hall and permitting process, aside from home construction and stuff like that, was
Which you really didn't really.
I've actually done a lot of that.
You can pull a permit for that.
Another shout out from Mark Delacour.
I was going to say when your husband Mark comes over,
nobody pulls a permit.
But it was in 2020, in the spring of 2020. I was trying to, I bought this commercial piece of property, and it was, I needed a garage, so I had my engineer put together a nice site plan. I had a lot of good ideas I thought to add, and I had to go in front of conservation,
sure,
and the planning board, and obviously the building department with all the plans and so forth. It's a funny thing going in front of these boards. Everybody that's on these boards, they're from town, they're volunteers, so I have a lot of respect for that. Conservation in Holliston has always been good to me, fair to me, and they're trying to protect the environment, and
sure.
I respect that. I think sometimes it can be a challenge. Planning board, I went in front of the planning board at the time, and being honest with you, it maybe didn't. It was a tough environment.
Sure.
These are the board members are our friends, our neighbors, our
Yep.
peers. They're other members of the community, but some boards, sometimes the vibe maybe is a little bit off.
Sure.
And maybe as an applicant, it can feel really kind of unwelcoming
Yep.
sometimes. And I think a lot of us have been there, have gone in front of not you with you, Jay. Everybody loves you because
No,
you got
not true. But go ahead.
But those good looks. But it was uncomfortable for me. I when you go in, you want to feel welcomed. I know that obviously I was under a lot of stress anyways, but it got to the end and I thought I was asking for like really reasonable things, and I felt like it was just everything was under the microscope. It was uncomfortable, and so years removed, looking back to last year, I had known that there was an opportunity to run for election, and I thought, based on my experiences as a employed business owner, I was the guy in every dilapidated garage in town.
Right.
I was the guy in every, that's what a lot of self-employed business owners do. They go where they can run their business, but it's hard to do it textbook,
Yep.
right? So I wanted to change the environment, being honest.
The board environment.
The board environment.
Yep.
Yeah, the board environment.
Yeah.
I thought that my experiences in my life could change the dynamic of the group. I wanted to help change the vibe of the group. It seemed like at the time, when I had been there and the years that I had I watched a lot of planning board meetings. A lot of them, frankly, didn't sit all that well with me. I'll die in Holliston.
Yeah.
I don't know that everybody can say that they know they're going to die in Holliston. So
Sure.
when you see things that maybe are uncomfortable for you, you think, maybe I could make that difference. I mean, I'm a very positive person. I have a lot to be grateful for in my life. I'm well connected in the community. I know a lot of people. A lot of them are my customers. A lot of them are my friends. So I hear everything. As a board member, you should be involved in your community. You should be well networked. You should know what's going on and be aware. And sometimes when you're not, it can really create a divide between the board and an applicant. So, it's a double-edged sword,
right?
Being honest with you now, because you're always constantly getting pulled at. But I know I am less than perfect, but I know that I'm a good person, and I know that my decisions I will be held accountable for.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, well, I mean, at the end of the day, right? So as a public servant, right? As
Yep,
a
sure.
public servant,
Jay knows,
and,
yeah.
and a well, Jay technically wasn't a volunteer because he did get paid when he was. So I'm just saying, it's for clarification purposes,
It was
for
50,
accuracy,
For those who are wondering, it was $50 a year.
for accuracy
Hold on.
purposes,
Yep,
which
yep,
it wasn't
yep.
zero, which is
Yep.
what the planning board gets.
Yep.
But anyway, no, but seriously, like when as a public servant, you want to, you're doing this because you want to help, you want to make
Yeah.
a difference,
Sure,
you right?
sure.
Yeah.
And you're right. Like there's people that kind of come at it from all different angles, and they have kind of all different kind of motivations.
Yeah.
Like at the end of the day, but if you can kind of try and put yourself in their shoes, right?
Yeah.
Try and put yourself
That's
in
important,
their
man.
position
Yeah.
and say, okay, I get what you're trying to do,
Yeah.
right? And I've always felt like this is like if I was like if I was like the building inspector, I'd be like, look, I know what you want to do,
Yeah.
I get it, like, and and this is every planning board, right? Like hey, we get this is what you want to do. Here's the rules. Let's see if we can make this work for you, right? And see, and
That's what we used to always say. We would say, look, I understand that your job is to say no in a lot of circumstances.
Yeah, but it shouldn't be, right?
Well,
Yeah.
but I would say to people, and if the answer is no, and if it has to be no, then that's fine. But what we would try to say is, but if there's a path to yes,
Yeah.
I think it's incumbent on us to help them find that path to yes. Certainly, some people want to try to do something that just can't get done.
Well,
or can't
let's
be
not
done.
just put ourselves in the shoes of an angry abutter.
Correct.
Let's also put ourselves in the shoes of the applicant.
Sure, that's
and
right.
that's kind of where I'm at. And I think for some board members, sometimes that's really hard to do because they have had different experiences. I mean, when who I happen to be running against, I think we just have maybe had different experiences in life, so we have different perspectives on things. I felt like the board at the time otherwise was. I saw a lot of potential. I was really excited to join. I'm very grateful to get that opportunity.
Sure,
And
yeah.
I feel like every member of the board is engaged in every meeting. And
Yeah.
so one thing I see with our current chair is that, he engages every board member.
Yeah.
And previous to that, maybe not so much.
here's the only thing that I have a recent experience with
Yes,
the
you
planning
do.
board,
Yes,
right?
you do.
So I want to kind of tell this. So and there's one thing that I just don't get. So how long have you been on the planning board?
A year.
So 1 year. So a whole year, right?
Yeah.
All right. So the plan, just in a nutshell, the people want to do some development near our house, right? And they went and the picture that came up were these three big lots of people want to build a residential house, right? And the last one, the one at the very end, was like 5 acres, right?
Yeah.
So and then they're like, okay, it's almost time for the abutters and everybody to talk about this, and so I'm dying to raise my hand. So I get it when I raise my hand, and I lead
Can
with.
you see him sitting in
But
the
I-
chair
oh my God.
like,
But
a,
I leave-
like a kindergartner in class squirming
so-
because it's not his turn to
So
talk?
like
Can
on
you
the
see him?
on the Zoom calls, like if you're just watching the show, you don't put your video on until it's
Right.
time for you to talk. My video was on like probably a good 15 minutes early, right? So
Yeah.
and I'm there and I'm waiting for my turn. And so obviously this is Jimmy Reed, my friend Jimmy
He was
Reed.
really just there to hang out.
My
That's all.
Jimmy Reed is he's on the planning board, and
Yeah.
there's a 5-acre lot that somebody wants to build. So what's the obvious joke that you lead in with? Is that, obviously Jimmy's going to want this because he's going to want to be able to cut
Yeah.
a 5-acre lot, right?
Yeah.
So I dropped that joke. I mean, right? I land it.
Yeah.
The planning board, his planning board, is cracking up.
Yeah.
Like, bah, ha, ha,
And
like,
my
what?
head is in my hands.
Like, but like, and I'm like, wait a minute, have you guys not heard this joke before? Why doesn't everybody
Am I the
say this?
first one dropping
Seriously,
yeah, we
like,
usually
wait,
don't say those jokes actually in the meeting.
I'm
Yeah,
like,
save
where?
those for after.
Yeah, they're
That's
after
right.
the meeting.
Like, where has this been? Right?
Yeah.
I mean, it was a softball. It was
Yeah,
easy-
yeah.
It's not a softball. It's the appearance of impropriety.
I
we would call
thought
That's
that
what we would say.
meeting went really well. There was a lot of positivity.
It was a great meeting.
There was a lot of people working together. I felt like all the neighbors involved. Not to get too far into it, but everybody was really supportive of each other. It didn't seem like there was a lot
Sure.
of division between applicant and neighbors, and that's something that I really want to see that trend continue with a lot of the applications that we see. I want to see, neighbors finding a way to come together with other neighbors who happen to be applicants. I mean, we all have goals. I think we all try to ask
Yep.
for reasonable things that we want to do with our land, and to see neighbors being supportive of each other is, I'd like to think that the environment that we have on our board now welcomes conversation, dialogue from each other, and also the things are upbeat.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, you're right. Boards do have personalities.
at the end of the
they
day,
do have
like,
personalities.
you know, we're I don't know. These are, it is what it is.
I mean, your select board had a very had a unique personality.
Yeah,
When you,
yeah.
Like with,
Oh,
when you
yeah,
were
they
on
did.
Yeah.
with
Well, I
with that
was
crew.
I've
right?
I always enjoyed the guys, the people I was on the board with. I always enjoyed that. But the people I was on the board with the longest, we had a really good back and forth. We had a really good
Yeah.
banter. We had a really good understanding of kind of where people were going to come out of these things. We could disagree.
There
And
wasn't the tension.
No, there was no tension
There
at
was
all.
there was
there
no
was no tension.
tension.
You could disagree,
Yeah.
and you know what? You could disagree politely and cordially, and
Yeah.
then you'd find. And by the way,
It was
and
a very peaceful atmosphere.
if you were,
when
and if
you
they
were
were
on that.
wrong, they were not afraid to say, you know what, I need to
Yeah.
think differently about this.
Yeah.
I've been given new information. So when you can
still
pull
do
that
you
together,
can still do it without being heavy-handed.
absolutely right. Yep, you can still do the job, and if you're able to foster that, and that, if you're,
Yeah.
that's a huge
I just want to
accomplishment.
change the vibe of the
temperature.
group
Bring the temperature
because
down.
the rest of the board members, with us now. I mean, Courtney Black ran recently. I'm so happy for her. I'm happy to see another woman added back to the group. I
Sure.
think Courtney's going to be awesome for us. She's never short of an opinion, but also is very familiar with a lot of the goings on in town, and she's a very positive person as well, and super smart and brings a lot to the table. I felt like she was kind of like the way I felt when I ran. She was
Sure.
kind of like the piece we were missing, and so I'm really excited about the future.
Nice.
You
That's
know,
great.
I'm
That's great.
thrilled that I got 4 more years and not 2 more.
Yep.
It's a 5-year term. And,
Yep.
I've,
And it needs to be. The projects are longer. You need to have that institutional
things-
knowledge.
Yeah,
you know.
I mean, when you're from the outside looking in, you think everything is the fault of the system.
Sure.
But a lot of it's engineers are busy people.
Yep.
They're busy like everybody else. A lot of it is engineers are juggling a lot of projects at the same time.
And things
So,
right.
Things take
take a long time.
It's nothing in this state is easy.
Nope.
You
Well,
know,
but they take a long time for a reason, and
Yeah.
I felt the same way when you actually get into the inner workings of government and you say to yourself, all right, you know what? There's certainly some things we could do better,
Yeah.
but it makes sense. It makes a lot of sense.
building code is really
Yep.
complex.
Yeah.
Yep.
John, as you know, and it can be really frustrating. So it's
And then it changes. Just when you think you figured it out, then they
it's
change it. They go
constantly
to something
changing.
new, and you
Yeah.
say to yourself,
well,
all right, well,
especially the new energy, the new energy revisions
Sure.
that are constantly happening.
Yeah. challenging.
So, all right. So we're getting close.
We're
to
getting
wrapping
close
this
to the
up.
finish
that's
line.
another
Yeah.
20
Yeah.
minutes.
I
This is
know.
fun.
I know. We absolutely
bring it
could
back.
do
We
this
can
again.
bring it back.
I mean, we get 3 microphones. I didn't even know we had 3.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to do. I needed to do like a little R&R plug,
I'm
little Jimmy
I'm
Reed,
afraid of what's coming.
little Jimmy Reed plug,
Yeah.
right? So, and this applies to you as well.
Go ahead,
So,
go ahead.
so this is the call that you and I usually get either like early in the spring or in the fall, and you know what it is? It's brutal honesty. It's honesty. It's like, but coming from the heart. Where
Oh,
Jimmy,
with love.
Where
With
Jimmy
love.
will call you up and he'll say, "Listen, I just drove by the office and it looks like crap." And
That's
so
pretty much the quote.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and
I'm really not trying to drum up work.
I'm
No,
not
no,
trying
not
to.
at all.
Look,
It's not
you don't
taken
have
that
to.
way. No,
you
no.
don't have to use us.
Yeah,
you don't have to
yeah.
use us. But it looks like crap. And oh, by the way, when I was a kid, and my grandfather, no, who used to live here?
Yeah, my great grandparents and grandparents actually lived in the building that you own now.
Right. So
on the corner.
Yeah. So he says, oh yeah. So my great grandfather
Yeah.
and grandfather's house that you are occupying right now
And poorly maintaining.
looks like crap. So either you do something about
Yeah.
it, or I'm going to do something about it. Or why don't we work? And so yeah. So obviously your answer is, when can your guys come over?
that's right, that's
right. And I know, and I think he's had that conversation.
on
with
countless occasions. Countless
Yeah.
occasions.
Now,
He
you guys
rolls by.
you guys live in you work out of high profile properties.
That's
and,
it. Well, 2 high-profile
everybody
individuals. It
sees
fits
them.
the
It's
fitting.
it's the face of your business. So
Yeah.
it's important that.
And this is why you call R&R Landscape,
No.
because you know what? Because we're talking about as a small business owner, right? You don't have time to call people back. You don't have.
There's a lot of awesome landscaping groups out there. We've been very fortunate.
There are some really good
Yeah.
ones in house. There absolutely are. I'm just saying.
And
but
I don't. I'd like to think we're one of them, but I mean,
You are
it's
one of
something
them.
that
they're
was,
right up
Absolutely.
there.
the town has been really good to us. We do a lot of the same thing. I think using the same business model from the beginning, had a lot to do with that. People used to laugh. They would say, well, we live in Hopkinton. You can see our home from the town line. And I'd say, but your kids don't go to school together.
Right.
The word of mouth is not quite the same. We want to pull up to your home and do all your neighbors' homes in the future. So, servicing only one town, Holliston. Sorry for anybody outside of Holliston. It's not personal.
Right.
Doing all of the same thing. Our business model really has never changed. Somewhere along the way, we did take over responsibilities for the cemeteries in Holliston. I'm also the town gravedigger, along with, you guessed it, Mark Deliker.
Yeah.
It's good to know who the last guy looking
Right,
over.
that's
looking
right.
over. This is the last face
yeah,
we're
yeah.
going to see.
No,
right
but you asked
there.
the question,
Right
who's
there.
digging the hole?
Yeah.
Well, now we know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Jimmy,
that's right.
great.
We're the
Yeah.
last ones to let.
I
We're
don't
the
know
last
how I
ones to
feel
let
about
you
that. I'm
down.
going to think through this a little bit. Maybe I'll move to
I hope I'm
Hopkinton.
100% okay with
Let's
this,
move to Hopkinton.
But it's an honor to do that.
All right.
For
All
a
right.
small town.
Let's go out on that. We'll go out on that.
That's good.
That's
All
good.
right, so Money in Law, what a great show we had today. Like,
Fantastic,
Jimmy,
fantastic.
thanks so much for joining us today. It was fantastic having you here. And we'll see everybody next time.
We'll
and
see everybody
again,
next week.
This is Jimmy Reed, R&R Landscaping. So if you had any questions,
Call
don't
him up.
Geez,
go
I hope
swing
I
by.
didn't say too much.
No, you
No,
no.
that's
Right,
fine.
all right.
That's fine.
All right. So on behalf of Jay Marson, who
John
is,
Durohan.
we will be back. Hopefully, I think we'll be back next week. So don't go changing. And thanks for joining us.
Have a great week, everybody.